You've been lied to, not by strangers, but by the people sitting closest to you. Coworkers smiling while planning exits, a boss nodding while already deciding your fate, a date leaning in, laughing, hiding intentions behind perfect eye contact. The problem isn't intelligence, it's misreading people. And here's the twist. This isn't luck or intuition, it's biology. By the end of this video, you'll understand why a few people quietly control rooms they barely speak in, and why once you see this system, you can't unsee it. Before language, before culture, before manners, every human body is ruled by a system older than civilization itself. The autonomic nervous system. You don't switch it on, you don't switch it off. And under pressure, it betrays you, which is exactly where real people reading begins. Let's kill a myth right now. Stress does not mean lying, stress means stakes, and that distinction changes everything. You're sitting across the table in a Manhattan office. Glass walls, city humming outside, a salary negotiation that decides your next 5 years, where every reaction suddenly matters. Or you're on a first date. She asks a question that lands heavier than expected, and your body answers before your mouth can catch up. Or you're pitching investors in Silicon Valley. 10 minutes, one chance, millions on the line, and no margin for misinterpretation. Under stress, the body doesn't care about your story. It switches to survival mode. Blood flow reroutes, muscle tension spikes, fine motor control degrades. That's when leakage happens, whether you want it or not. Former FBI counterintelligence officer Joe Navarro puts it bluntly. There is no single tell, only clusters of involuntary stress responses, and that's where most people fail. One signal means nothing. Patterns mean everything, which is why shortcuts don't work. They taught you to stare at faces. Professionals don't, because faces are socially trained from childhood. A politician rehearses smiles. A con artist trains eye contact. A liar practices tone. But the body never got the memo, and that's the weakness nobody can patch. Micro-expressions are emotional glitches, fractions of a second. Too fast for conscious control, too honest to hide, which is why they matter. Fear flashes a sudden eye-white exposure, disgust leaks through a one-sided lip curl, contempt shows up as a unilateral smirk. These signals were mapped through decades of research by scientists like David Matsumoto, and they don't care about excuses. But here's where amateurs screw up. A micro-expression does not mean deception, it means emotion, and confusing the two ruins accuracy. Fear could mean lying, being judged, wanting approval, remembering something dangerous. Emotion is the signal, context is the decoder, and miss that distinction and you misread everything. Now it gets interesting. When internal stress rises, the body self-regulates automatically, and that regulation leaves fingerprints, neck rubbing, face touching, throat clearing, hands gripping each other. These are called pacifying behaviors, and they're not random habits. Think of them as scratching an itch inside the nervous system. One pacifier means nothing. People fidget. But 3 at once, right after a sensitive question. Is the body asking for relief? Now for the channel almost nobody watches. Feet. Feet are primitive. They're wired for movement, not manners. They decide before the brain finishes thinking, which makes them hard to fake. Feet pointing away means the body wants out. Feet bouncing signals suppressed flight. Feet frozen in place points to fear inhibition. And those reactions happen quietly. Joe Navarro calls feet the most honest part of the body for one reason. People forget they're being watched. And what the body forgets to hide is usually the truth. But here's the part nobody warns you about. Once you learn to read stress, once you can see fear, suppression, and leakage, something unsettling becomes clear. Stress can be manufactured. And in the next section, you'll learn how powerful people deliberately create pressure, not to dominate physically, but to force the body to confess without a single question. That's where this stops being observation and becomes influence. And most people are not ready for that shift. Let's draw a hard line. Reading people is neutral. Using it is not. And that line separates observers from operators. This layer isn't taught in classrooms. It isn't discussed on podcasts. And it definitely isn't shared with people who still believe confidence equals honesty. This is where intelligence agencies, elite negotiators, and dangerous personalities operate. Welcome to the part of the system that changes outcomes, not by force, but by pressure. Here's something uncomfortable. People high in dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, aren't emotional geniuses. They're pattern hunters. They don't feel deeply. They observe precisely, and that emotional distance is functional. They test boundaries early. They watch reactions closely. They adapt faster than normal people, because they don't carry guilt, anxiety, or emotional noise. Lower emotional interference means lower cognitive load, and that advantage compounds. They use touch strategically, eye contact deliberately, charm as a pressure tool, not a personality trait. Charm isn't warmth, it's calculated stimulation, and because they don't emotionally invest, they pivot instantly when something doesn't work. Most people hesitate, they adjust. Here's a stat that should bother you. Humans detect lies at about 54% accuracy, barely better than flipping a coin. Why? Because you've been trained to look for performance cues, not processing strain. You were taught to watch faces. Professionals watch load, and that distinction changes results. This one breaks people. Liars often increase eye contact, and it confuses everyone watching. Why? Because they're not expressing truth. They're monitoring belief. They're watching you watch them. Truth tellers relax into conversation. Liars stay alert. So when someone locks eyes too long, blinks less, leans forward with intensity, that's not confidence. That's surveillance. Sometimes it's deception. Sometimes performance anxiety. Either way, it's not proof of honesty. Lying is expensive. Not emotionally, mentally, it burns bandwidth. When someone lies, the mouth slows before the body does. And that lag is measurable. Watch for delayed responses. Rephrasing simple questions. Over-explaining obvious points. Reduced first-person language. They're buying time. Rewriting reality in real time. The story isn't failing yet, but the processor is overheating. And pressure exposes that heat. Forget what movies taught you. Interrogators don't accuse. They don't threaten. They don't rush. They create strategic discomfort. Silence that stretches too long. Open-ended questions with no escape hatch. A calm presence that refuses to rescue the subject. As stress rises, baseline behavior shifts. And it's never dramatic. Subtle changes matter. A shift in posture, a break in speech rhythm, inconsistencies between answers minutes apart. The truth rarely leaks as confession, it leaks as misalignment. And that's where professionals focus. The numbers. Here's what power negotiators watch. The body, after the number lands. Because that reaction is unfiltered. A sudden lean back signals resistance. Leaning in with compressed lips signals calculation. Stillness after a counteroffer signals internal debate. Deals aren't won when words finalize. They're won earlier, when one side realizes the other is already shifting internally. Founders are told to read the room for a reason. Investors don't interrupt when they're interested. They get still. Subtle nods. Hands steepled. Eyes narrowing. Not from doubt, but focus. Boardrooms don't argue. They disengage. And boredom kills companies faster than bad products. Miss that signal, and you don't lose money later. By now, you should feel it. Reading stress is one thing. Applying pressure is another. Because once you understand cognitive load, once you know which signals spike under discomfort, something disturbing becomes obvious. Influence isn't persuasion, it's environment control. And in the next chapter, you'll learn how power players shape environments so people reveal themselves without realizing they're being tested at all. That's where manipulation becomes invisible. And once you understand that layer, you'll never walk into a room the same way again. Here's the truth no dark psychology channel tells you. If you use this skill to dominate people, you will eventually be alone. Feared, avoided, silently cut out of rooms you used to influence. That's not mastery, that's short-term power with a long-term cost. The highest level operators don't play that game. They don't flex it. They use people reading defensively and strategically, like a weapon that stays holstered unless absolutely necessary. This is where amateurs and professionals separate. Amateurs react. Professionals anticipate. Real mastery looks like this. You sense friction before conflict ignites. You detect manipulation before it lands. You redirect conversations before egos collide. Not by humiliating people, not by exposing them, but by steering the environment. Here's the counterintuitive truth. A relaxed nervous system leaks truth faster than fear ever will. Pressure forces defense. Safety invites revelation. That's why the most effective negotiators don't intimidate first. They stabilize first, then they watch. This is where most people fail, even smart ones. Before you interpret anything, you must know neutral. How does this person behave when nothing is at stake? When they're not being evaluated. You observe speech rhythm, default posture, natural hand movement, eye behavior at rest. Only change has meaning. No baseline means no accuracy. No accuracy means projection. And projection is how people misread others and destroy trust. One cue can lie, patterns don't. Professionals never act on a single signal. They wait for convergence. They look for verbal content that doesn't match physical behavior. Physical stress paired with timing shifts. Emotional spikes aligned with specific topics. When three systems agree, language, body, and timing, you're seeing something real. Until then, you wait. Patience is power. Here's the uncomfortable reality. America has entered a psychological pressure era. Anxiety is high. Attention is fragmented. Digital manipulation is normalized. People are influenced constantly by algorithms, narratives, incentives they never agreed to. If you can't read people now, you surrender leverage. You absorb gaslighting. You miss silent power shifts. You won't lose loudly. You'll lose quietly. One meeting, one relationship, one decision at a time. This isn't about becoming dark. It's about staying clear in a world designed to confuse you. There's one last thing you need to understand. The more accurate you become at reading people, the more responsibility you carry. Because insight can protect, or it can corrupt. And in the next chapter, you'll see the final layer most people never reach. Self-reading. The moment you realize your own nervous system leaks just as loudly as everyone else's, is the moment true mastery begins. And that realization changes everything. You now understand why you've been misled your entire life. Not because people are evil, but because biology speaks louder than words. You've seen the leaks, the stress patterns, the moments where truth escaped before language caught up. Most people never lose because they're weak. They lose because they're unaware. And now you're no longer unaware. But here's what almost nobody tells you. Reading people is only the first layer. There's a deeper one, where silence becomes a weapon, calm becomes dominance, and others reveal themselves trying to read you. This is where power flips. If you stop here, you'll be sharper than most. But if you go deeper, you stop being readable. And in today's world, that's survival. If this video hits 1,000 likes, I'll immediately release the next episode in this series, revealing a psychological tool so powerful it's almost unfair. So don't just watch and move on. Join the Mind Anatomy Elite, because mastering the mind isn't entertainment anymore. It's defense. If you don't understand how influence works, someone else is already using it on you. Quietly, systematically, without permission. In the next video, we expose why the most dangerous person in the room is often the quietest one. How elite operators make themselves unreadable. How calm becomes pressure. How silence forces others to leak information without a single word spoken. That's not observation anymore. That's mastery. You've learned how to read the room. Next, you'll learn how to disappear inside it, while everyone else reveals everything. And once you understand that layer, there's no going back.